embrace the digital age. Like most industries, the ICT cybersecurity industry is currently confronted with immense change. Change brings both risk and opportunity. New technology, market entrance, customer expectations, and new business models will allow the sector to develop to meet these challenges, some evolutionary and others far more revolutionary. The digital revolution is having an unprecedented impact on the future of work, people, and learning. Developments in robotics, social media, artificial intelligence, drones, machine learning, and virtual reality are changing the requirements of the future of the workforce. Decision makers and stakeholders have to find new ways to manage talent in an organization for optimal productivity. What strategies should be considered to attract, develop, retain, reward top talent in our organizations today? And how can HR professionals that are sitting amongst us today in our panelists inspire passion, innovation, and entrepreneurial spirit and excellence during these unprecedented times? This forum today will join us this afternoon with our industry leaders and find out how these leaders transition current ICT cybersecurity with the robots and other highly automated processes as artificial intelligence-driven era roars into life. I'm very, very happy this afternoon to introduce our panel to you. Bolaji, in no particular order. When I call your name, if you could just do a wave so people can identify the face to the name. Bolaji Shotor is the head of HR for Reliance. He's an experienced human resource business partner with a demonstrated history of working in the HR consulting, information technology, and insurance industry. Our second participant today is Oshioko Ojio. He is the Chief Operating Officer of Arise. Oshioko Ojio has over 15 years of experience in advancing strategic innovation objectives for companies across America, Europe, and Africa. Our third panelist this afternoon is Inkem Dilim Uwajo Bogo. She is the Managing Director and CEO of Future Software Resources, a seasoned information technology professional with over 15 years of industry experience in Africa's largest emerging economy, with a deep purpose and focus on bridging the digital divide and transforming Africa by harnessing the benefits of digitalization. Shefumi Faduhunsi. Shefumi is Oracle Academy Programs Manager for Sub-Sahara Africa at Oracle. She's a management consultant, project manager, and corporate social responsibility professional. She's garnered experience in government relations and project management across multiple industries and have honed skills in providing solutions. Thank you so much, Shefumi, for joining us this afternoon. I'm going to move along to Charles Chibuyizi. Charles, here we go. Charles is with First Bank Nigeria, and I love Charles's title very much. He is a threat intelligence and vulnerability management. So it really, I think your title sums up our discussion this afternoon, Charles. So I really look forward to lots of input from you on what threat intelligence is really about, and how do you plan for this in your business continuity. Charles is a cybersecurity professional with years of experience as a consultant and in-house advisory for financial services and fintech organizations. He has performed in cybersecurity fields that cut across testing, threat intelligence, incident response, and security operations. I'm going to move along to Bode Oguntoke. There we go. Bode is with FBN Holdings, and he's head of their internal audit. Who better than Bode to talk about risk and compliance to us today? He's an experienced accountant, auditor, and risk manager dedicated to establishing controls in finance, operations, and information technology. A seasoned chartered accountant with over 15 years experience in the banking sector, and a unique auditor with 3 IT certifications. And I think Baudet really talks to what we mean when I ask the question, how do we become future fit in our organizations to pander to digitalization? I'm going to move across to Bharat Soni, who's the Chief Information Security Officer at Guarantee Trust Bank. Bharat Soni is a result-oriented, seasoned information, cybersecurity, and risk management professional with over 21 years of experience in this domain, strong acumen in implementation of governance, risk, and compliance in complex environments. Welcome, Bharat. I'm going to introduce you now to the Chief Information Security Officer of Union Bank of Nigeria, whose special task this afternoon was to challenge me to say his name. So I'm going to attempt this. Ogeni Fovi Oyewari. Did I get it right?
Fair enough.
So Ogeni Fovi has worked in the KPMG audit space, Trust Standard Bank, First City Monument Bank, so clearly across financial services, and has been involved in audit of all areas of branch management, training and regional support, business improvement, enterprise application, operational risk, business continuity, and environmental and social risk management. That brings us to all our participants this afternoon. Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome. For those that have just joined us, welcome to the Regenesys Business School event in Nigeria this afternoon. And we are talking about the future of ICT and security industry in the new digital age. I'm joined this afternoon by esteemed panelists of specialists in the space that will give us their input practically on what's working and how this industry is transitioning under their direction. I'm going to move across to Balaji Shote to introduce herself, as well as some of the innovation that they've had and success they've had around this space. Over to you, Balaji.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Balaji Shote. I work for Reliance Infosystems. It's an information and communications technology company. We partner with our clients for protection assurance, business transformation and operational excellence, walking them through the journey of their end-to-end protection, cloud computing, and the rest of them. In regards the future of the ICT and cybersecurity, what we've been able to do is during this, particularly with the global pandemic, the COVID-19 pandemic, to ensure that businesses are running wherever they find themselves, wherever the resources find themselves, and work should no longer be location based. It's more about productivity. It's more about the value you can add to the business, and ensuring that while you're working, you are protected. You're not exposing your information, you're not exposing valuable data for your company that may eventually cost your company either financial or material or reputational damage in the process of you doing your work. That's a lot of what we've been doing this period. Thank you.
Thank you, Balaji. I'm going to move over to Nkem Dilim.
Thank you so much. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Nkem Dilim Wajibe, and I'm the CEO of FutureSoft. And at FutureSoft, we focus on a lot of different things. We have 3 key practice areas: digital marketing, e-learning, and IT consultancy, under which we do a lot of digital transformation consultancy and IT security, vulnerability testing, penetration testing, and the likes. And what we've really seen over the years is, sort of a rise in the need for cybersecurity and information security, especially when it comes to, this year. I think in this year, we've seen a rise in threats, we've seen a rise in phishing attacks, and all sorts of different cybersecurity risks for businesses, especially because people are working from home and the infrastructure requirements and platforms are very different. In terms of, what I really love to focus on, it's really people. And when I say people, I mean both the end users, right, that require a lot of awareness training and education so that they can stop being the weakest point in our infrastructure, but also people in terms of the actual engineers that, sort of constitute the talent pipeline. And that's one area that in Nigeria we are seeing a huge deficit in, and we really need to start building our talent pipeline in a very structured manner to ensure that we have the right type of talent to continue to service the industries, because cybersecurity, especially when it comes to businesses, embarking on their digital transformation journeys, is a very critical cornerstone of that journey. So it's absolutely important to have the right type of talent that can actually go into these different roles that are required, so that other people can also have awesome titles like Charles. Thank you.
Thank you so much for that. I'm going to move over to Oshioke Ojio.
Hello, everyone. So my name is Oshioke Ojio. I am the Chief Operating Officer for Areas. Areas Incorporated is based out of Fort Lauderdale, Florida in the US. And we're really focused on the blockchain market. I think what I would share about what we do in relation to this topic is our focus is really on how do we integrate risk governance or risk management, right, in three main verticals. One is for the governance of digital currency, interoperability in payments. So it's essentially saying that with the rise of blockchain technology, more specifically Bitcoin, but of course there are also other non-crypto, non-currency focuses for blockchain. But in this general arena of digital currency, as we expect that to expand, we even saw some of that over in Nigeria. We're seeing a growing rise of that in the US here as well. That there's going to be a need for a lot more interoperability in these various different forms of digital currency, right? So there's a focus on how do we build an integrated risk governance for that. Another area would be in the area of electronic medical records. So we have a product called Tested. Tested is really focused on becoming kind of like your digital healthcare passport, right? A mechanism, again, with bulletproof security on how do we manage an end user's health records. In the case of where we are, COVID-19 now, where there's a greater need for more frequent testing, maybe not so in Nigeria, but in many other markets, here in the US as well, definitely. Many instances where in order for businesses to reopen, to get back to work, and even in a more, if you will, gig economy, there's still that need for having a lot more mobility around our health information, right? So how do we provide the integrated risk governance for that? And then lastly, in some more developed markets where we are, it's when we look at the using airtime, not as currency, but as a means of exchange, right? So when we now have airtime exchange in mobile telecommunications, there's now greater need for this integrated risk governance. And how I think that all ties into where we are today, I mean, it's quite straightforward, right? The pandemic has forced us into a situation where there's greater acceptance for having to work remotely. Maybe not even acceptance, but a requirement to have work done remotely. We see that with the different kind of geopolitical issues we have globally, in some cases there's more reliance or a little less reliance on the traditional banking sector. And we see a lot more, not where it needs to be yet, but a growing reliance on digital currencies, right? And so these are two areas where I see what we do in providing integrated risk governance has been relevant to discussion today.
Thank you so much, Oshioko. That's some good insight that I want to tag on for future questions as we go into the panel as well. Shefumi Fadihonsi from Oracle.
Okay, thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Shefumi Padamsi and I work for Oracle Academy. Oracle is a IT company, multinational based in California. And I manage the academic programs for Sub-Saharan Africa. And our goal is to support computer science education advancement. And we do that by supporting educators, students, government sector, to ensure that we support them with the pedagogical form of Oracle technologies. Our resources are for teaching, learning, and research purposes. And to relate it to the topic today, one of the things that we've been able to do is Oracle technologies are used by enterprise customers, which some of them are also on the call. We convert them to some form of pedagogical formats, and we allow lecturers and students to learn so that at the point of graduation, they do have some first-hand engagement with these technologies that are relevant in the workspace. Around Oracle itself, we have a bragging right that I think up to date has been increased to about 3 million, where our founder said that the first person to hack Oracle database is going to win that money. So we are big on security and cyber securities. Also, we launched the Oracle Cloud, which has its own autonomous database and it also has its own security functions. And we support educators with this. We launched our Oracle Academic Cloud Account program for schools, educators, so that students can also try their hands on these technologies in school so that they are ready to be able to take on the jobs and get interesting roles when they graduate. I'm hoping that students around there begin to understand that they also have to educate other users, their client base, those that they would build solutions for, about the recent rise and continuing rise in cybersecurities. I personally say this to my friends generally, that a lot of people do not want to go the cloud way because they are scared of security. And a lot of people are running to cloud for the same reasons, to ensure that their data is secured. I think the question is, how well can you use it? And how well can you proactively determine possible acts so that the solutions and software built from time to time can also be able to capture the rising trend in technology. So I do hope to have a good time in the session today and to be able to share what Oracle is doing and how Oracle Academy supports across Sub-Saharan Africa. Thank you.
Sorry about that, my mute was on. Thank you, Shefumi. I'm going to move over to Charles Chibuzi. Charles is also joined by a colleague of his, I believe, on line, Zachariah. Both are from First Bank. So welcome, Zachariah, as well. Thank you, Charles. Please go ahead.
Thank you very much, Reggie. So my name is Charles Chibueze, and I'm a threat intel and vulnerability management analyst. And simply put, I'm part of the team that ensures that there's no breach or compromise in my organization. And I focus on accumulating feeds from different sources, analyzing this, although this has been automated to some point as regards the future, and I ensure that the various teams that have indicators of compromise that are relevant to them have these IOCs given to them and is treated on their end, such that whatever attack that has been carried out with those indicators of compromise cannot be replicated in our environment. So as regards this webinar today, my focus would be based on threats, because whenever the technology landscape changes, new threats evolve, and we, the threat analysts, have to also evolve with the threats. We need to power up with the activities of the threat actors. So I'll give an example. Let's look at the advent of the IoT age, where you had different devices connected to the internet. You have your toaster connected to the internet. You have your fridge connected to the internet. In cases now, we have cars, we have chairs connected to the internet. And one of the core vulnerabilities in these devices is unauthenticated access. Anybody could literally just gain authenticated access to these devices because the manufacturers were focused on functionality and not security. So this is where people like us come in place. We identify loopholes that threat actors can take advantage of to wreak havoc, and we close those loopholes and ensure that transitioning to the future is a smooth one, because sometimes compromise in security can jeopardize human life. I tell you that for real, it can jeopardize the safety of human life. So we ensure that these risk scenarios do not crystallize. And I personally, in this discussion, I won't be discussing anything short of threats that are affecting any form of change, any form of technological advancements that my fellow panelists will be talking about. So thank you very much for inviting me, and I do believe we'll enjoy it.
Thank you very much, Charles. I'm going to move over to Bode Oguntoke. Bode is
Thank
from
you.
FBN Holdings as Head of Internal Audit.
Thank you very much. I work with FBN Holdings, where we have interest in companies. We are non-operating, so we have operating companies like Commercial Banking Group, my colleagues from First Bank. First Bank is our flagship interest in asset management. We have interest in merchant banking. We have interest in insurance, and we're still growing more businesses. So we are faced with a situation where technology is changing and is also changing the business model. And my responsibility in assurance function is to quickly dimension the risk inherent in all these changes, especially since the decision makers, the management and the board will want to have assurance in all these areas. So I will give you insight into what we are confronted with. Because we are non-operating, we have to protect the investment in our subsidiaries. So the decision makers are always put on edge as to understanding the change, the content of some of the changes that we'll be talking about. They are put on edge as the speed of this change. They are also put on edge on the impact of this change, because it's going to impact on the resources they are supposed to optimize returns on. So we as assurance provider, we need to look at their concerns. I'll mention 2 or 3 of their concerns that have put us, that have made us busy nowadays. First of all, they are concerned on how quickly huge investment in technology, either for operation or for security, will be written off. You invest in a technology now, 1 billion, 65 billion, and in a short time, you have to write it off. Why? Because another technology has come and it has made your last investment obsolete. This is a big concern. So they need to know what to invest in and what not to invest in, and also be competitive. Another concern is how this change is affecting the business model. Like I told us, we have interest in different, like First Bank, we have banking industry, and it's now super dynamic. You can't just say the change is dynamic anymore. It's now super dynamic, such that your investment in new strategy, in new structure, in new system, in all these operating entities, your investment in staff, in skills to support the model, in a very short time will just become useless. For instance, if you have made so much investment in branch network, you will agree with me that COVID has proved to us that you don't need to go to physical bank to do banking. anymore. So your investment in structures, in buildings, will have to be written off quickly. And that's going to be a huge loss. And this being overtaken by mobile banking and online banking. Even if commercial banks are invested by online banking, we can see that open banking and financial technology is already overtaking the traditional banking system. And this is a big concern to the decision makers in the holding company. And we as assurance providers, we need to give them that assurance. This is putting extra responsibility to us as risk managers, as auditors, as internal control officers, as to advising the decision makers on desirability of going into a particular investment, into new technology or business, visibility, viability, and security of the new technology or business. So I'll be talking about these areas for the decision makers and how our assurance function will need to assist or has been assisting in this area. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Bode. I'm going to move over to Bharat Soni, who is from Guarantee Trust Bank. Thank you, Bharat. Sorry, Bharat, your screen, your background screen is.
Yes, I can see.
Yeah.
Let me remove it.
It's completely taken your face out.
Just 1 minute. Yeah. I hope it's
Here we
fine
go.
now.
Thank you. Much better.
Yes. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Bharat Soni. I am the Chief Information Security Officer for Guarantee Trust Bank, Nigeria. We are the most, I would say, and I know majority of my panelists may like to differ with the opinion, but we are the most innovative bank when it comes to technology. So we set the trend. I would like to put it like that. And being the Chief Information Security Officer, I have to look into many things. I have to ensure that yes, the customer data is secured, my bank is secured, no frauds are happening, internal, external frauds does not materialize. All the things which comes under the portfolio of cyber security, technology security, risk management in terms of business risk assessment, the compliance to different regulatory requirements, and of the law requirements and other regulations like GDPR, NDPR, ISO requirements and things like that are also being done by me. I head the information security group over here. So looking at the bank size and the number of customers, it's a heavy task assigned, so that even from a privacy perspective, we have to be sure that there is no data leakage happening because of any loophole into the system, processes, technology, people, everything around the data. So when we talk about the topic of today's discussion, I would say I will take starting from a banking perspective, and maybe we can go into generic discussions. But from a banking perspective, the bank look out of a bank and the future of banks are changing. As Bode just mentioned, that people are moving away from the normal banking hall thing to the alternate channels, and even banks are investing more and more into making people comfortable at their fingertips. So the technology is evolving day by day, and hence the landscape is also evolving. What we say is, when the landscape of technology and cybersecurity is evolving, the same thing applies for the changing modus operandi or changing way of cyber attacks on a day-to-day basis. The goalpost keeps changing. As a CISO, you need to just not only look forward to shield the attacks, but you have to look at the back end as well, that whether I'm standing in the right position or not. When we talk about attacks and things like that, obviously the topic of today will also lead to how a business is going to change in banking industry, how people will react to the change, is there a requirement of understanding of the change in every governance level, like from top to bottom? Like, in fact, if I say that changing environment also lead to changing the leadership style as well, because if you are not able to change your leadership style, earlier we used to have physical presence of everyone. You can see whether people are performing or not, and then you can immediately pinpoint things like that. But now, as a leader, you need to also think through that whether you need to look into changing the way when people are not physically present, and then whether you are looking for performance-based ideas or you are looking for work output, and how you are going to cope up with this change in the trend, the way your cyber attacks are changing, the new technologies are evolving, and then how the regulatory requirements are impacting you as a bank. All those things will really impact from a banking perspective. So from today's discussion and from my esteemed colleague panelists here, I would say that I would also like to learn their views, how they are looking into cybersecurity, data privacy issues, and the leadership itself, which will impact the future of every organization, whether it's banking, non-banking, and things like that. What are their thought processes around things, and maybe uh, let's look how it goes till the end. Hope everyone will gain something out of this thing. Thank you.
Thank you very, very much, Bharat. I'm going to move to Ogenifovi or Yawari.
Thank you. And so I double as the Chief Information Security Officer and the Head of Operational Risk Management at Union Bank. So this year has been quite tasking. And so the business continuity issues on one hand, and from COVID to pandemic response, to NSAS response, to ensuring that our facilities are robust enough to support wide, how would I put it, largely most of our staff working remotely. And so I'll tell you that this year has been tough. But one thing which was an advantage for us, was that not just on a personal note, but for the organization, we had always believed in the concept of deliverables rather than being locked in the office between the particular working hours. So we'd always had flexi working arrangements in place. So we had systems that were robust, and basically we just had to activate that when we needed it at that point in time. So we're quick, given the fact that we already had a lot of crisis management teams that had been put to test, and those were quickly activated upon, and it was a bit of a smooth journey for us to transition from what it was to the new normal as it is now. So it's been a tough year, quite all right, but I think one thing Bharat said, which is quite insightful, is the fact that leadership has to change. Gone are those days where a manager or a leader believes that his people are not working. Now, the reality is that you can't even see them right now. So you just have to trust that they're doing the right thing. So you need to change the way you manage people, basically, to ensure that you get better results from them. So I think during the course of today's session, we'll discuss more about how to ensure that the organization is robust enough to ensure continuity, and how to ensure that plans that we put in place are actually going to work in the event of disruptions like this. And believe me, we're still going to have more of them to come, either now or in the future. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. I think that was some insightful input from everyone. And I'm going to kick off this afternoon's discussion with our first question. And whoever is excited and ready to start with, please just raise your hand and let's move ahead. How secure or insecure would you rate cybersecurity in Nigeria, and why? We hear lots of cyber fraud, money laundering, data losses, data theft. How secure would you rate cybersecurity in Nigeria? Who would like to take that question head on? I'll go to Zachariah. Thanks, Zachariah.
All right, so thank you, everybody, and the entire panelists. So to me, in Nigeria, because most of us we are coming from a very regulated industry. For example, the banking industry is highly regulated by different bodies, CBN, PCI DSS, ISO 27, ISMS system. So to me, I think I cannot talk of other industries, but for the financial service industry where we are coming from. So I manage the information security engineering team for First Bank, Nigeria. So, and then First Bank, we have a different subsidiary in different African countries. We have subsidiary in UK, France, and all of that. So to me, I can only speak for financial industry because we are well regulated, because gone are those days that the chief information security officer of a bank or somebody that is acting as the chief information security officer of a bank will just be honorary officer if such a function exists. And most of the time, if such a function exists, you realize that it's only one person that is handling that function. And we all know that cybersecurity is very, very broad. We talk about today, they say data is the new oil, and data privacy is very, very key. So one singular person cannot manage network security, cannot manage application security, cannot manage vulnerability management, cannot manage threat intelligence, cannot manage cannot manage security operations center. So that's the reason why there will be need for proper segregation of duty, so that there will be a kind of different area of expertise. Like, for example, I manage the security engineering team. So basically what we do in the security engineering team is just to ensure that different platforms that we manage are well fine-tuned, like the next generation firewall, the intrusion prevention system, then we also ensure that the data privacy security is in place. We also ensured security by default. We also ensure that security is embedded to every stages of the system development lifecycle. And we also ensure that security is not seen as an afterthought. So if you look at the CBN framework, so CBN framework clearly states that, even though I know that there's some few banks, commercial banks, that are still struggling to align with the CBN cybersecurity framework. So any bank that aligns well directly with the CBN cybersecurity framework, so it clearly states that there should be, at a minimum, a bank should have a SOC, security operations center, and the SOC should be managed 24/7, because these threat actors, they are not sleeping. They neither sleep nor slumber. Sorry for that word, because they are some of these threat actors. They are well motivated by government, by different hacking bodies, and they are well motivated. They are not distracted, unlike some of us. I could remember 4, 5 years, 7 years ago, where I was working in a bank, and I was maybe we have only 2 people managing the entire information security of the bank. But here am I today. I manage a team of information security engineering team, and we have other team. We have a security operations center. We have threat and vulnerability management. Like my colleague Charles is in threat and vulnerability management. We have various teams, and we have various security engineers, various security analysts working to, and we also have a part of the team that manage application and data security. So we manage dedicated teams that ensure that for every stages of application, maybe before the application is during the brainstorming session, different stakeholders, product managers are engaged, and then during the designing, architecturing of the application, you ensure that all the security best practices are put in place, something like OWASP and all of that. Not just put in place during the development stage, you also ensure that security code review is being handled. So definitely, for you to handle a security code review, you don't expect a network security engineer to come and carry out a security code review. Definitely, for you to really be able to handle security code review, you must have a very solid background in application security. We must have a very background in software development. So like every member of my teams, by default, they can develop software very well. So they know what it takes to write a normal software and what it takes to write a very secure software, so they can do the analysis. So you just don't rely on the. There are tons of tools that can be used for static application security testing, but some of these tools might be false positive. You need to look at those things manually, and during the development stage, definitely we integrate the SAST to the developer's ID in such that by default, even if a developer doesn't want to think security, so what we do in FirstBank, we ensure that as you are doing your development, if there is any security bug at the code level, you'll not be able to compile your code. And beyond that, the team also from the back end, even if the developers try to silence that and maneuver the stuff, from the back end, we are seeing this stuff because they are not managing this SAST. So whenever the code, whenever the application gets to us, before we do our internal vulnerability and assessment and penetration testing, we will have asked them to go and deal with the vulnerability at the code level. So probably if there's some vulnerability that are missing, maybe at the code level. So whenever we are doing our VAPT, internal VAPT, we're able to see clearly and we're able to focus our energy more on something that really matters. Because if you address vulnerability at the code level, then the most of the vulnerability will have been dealt with. So we, the security engineers, will be more challenged to look at something much more seriously, definitely manual testing. So for the banking industry, I think we are doing pretty good in Nigeria, but I can't speak for every bank. I can only speak for FirstBank and FIBank. But for the other industry, I'm not so sure. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Zachariah. Would anyone else like to comment on how secure, insecure would you rate cybersecurity in Nigeria? And I see Ogenofovi has his hand up. Go ahead.
So, basically, like Zach has said, regulation is strong, but the actual fact is this: we are not immune to whatever cyber threats are around the world. We've had our own share of incidents and losses as both an industry and the country. So I would say that we're quite compared to so many other clients, we're doing pretty well. When I go on functions outside and when we discuss in terms of implementation at where we are, I see that we are quite advanced because probably about strong regulation that has been on us. And so we've had, how would I put it, our own share of it. But one thing I just need to draw the fact to is that, it's like you said, we're motivated on two different levels. And so one thing about cybersecurity from this perspective is basically that it's a war with the criminals that you're constantly engaging. So you just need to strive that as a currency trader, I used to trade, and I always try to ensure that my wins are more than my losses. But in this case, you must ensure that your wins are most times in the bag and that your losses are very minimal. So we're doing pretty well compared to so many other clients, but I believe that there's still a lot more that we can do. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Is there anyone else who'd like to? Can I move on to the next question? Charles, I think you and Zachariah are from the same company, right? So I'm not going to afford the same company to comment on the same question. Thank you so much. How have we improved our current data research and analytics in Nigeria? Bolaji, I'm going to hand over that one to you. How have we improved our current data research and analytics in Nigeria?
I think that it's a journey, right? The agencies that are there to help in ensuring data security, we have the Nigerian Data Protection Regulation, who will create the platform. They've already given that platform where people, for the safeguard of rights of natural persons to data privacy, for transactions, exchange of personal data, manipulation of data. And then with what we also have in trying to data analytics in organization, ensuring that they make informed decisions using data. I think we're on that journey. We're not there yet. I can't say the country is there yet, but I mean, efforts are being made by individuals, by organizations, by regulatory bodies to ensure that this journey for the protection of data that belongs to individuals, for decision-making processes are appropriately handled to, and this is what this is going to, when you have the right data, when you're keeping the right data, you would be able to make the informed decision. I would use a case scenario, the global pandemic. We can see data that is coming being used to direct what is going on, to inform the public about where COVID cases are likely to occur, or what are the things people are doing. Are people following the regulations enough? Are people doing the appropriate things enough that is going to help in flattening the curve? So people, I mean, as a nation, we're becoming more data conscious, and we're becoming aware of data. And we're using this data to make informed decisions for all areas of our economy. Like Zachariah rightly said before, he said he could speak for his own industry. I think it's the same thing in the ICT industry. People are using it to find out where are the decision makers, where are your consumers, where are the things that, what are the things that, because when you have this data, you'll be able to say, what are the things that you put in place, the mitigants. You can make informed decision. The stakeholders around that decision-making process can make informed decision. So I think we're on a journey. We're not there, but we're making an effort. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Balaji.
Sorry, Reddy, you're muted.
Okay. Sorry about that. Nkem Demilim, you can go ahead, please.
Thank you very much. Yeah, I think that, Balaji has really summarized it well. And I think more and more organizations are starting to build their own data reservoirs and are starting to really, collect data and really also think about what are the data points that we need in order to really measure our business outcomes and make the right decisions. So on our digital transformation projects, we see this happening more and more, where organizations really are looking to optimize the customer experience. They're looking to optimize their processes internally. And both of those things cannot be done without actually collecting the right type of data. So they're realizing that there's so much data, and you really have to be clear on what those data points are, and really, what way to really go. And what we're also seeing is that there are more and more positions being advertised across different industries for data analysts. And I actually run a startup that also trains data scientists and data analysts. And we're seeing really high demand for those, those job roles and those qualifications. So I do think that data is something that more and more Nigerian companies are taking serious. And I believe that in the next 2 or 3 years, we'll really start seeing more and more data-driven automation. We'll start seeing more and more data-driven, sort of decision-making, and even data being incorporated in the sales and marketing process and the entire customer experience.
Thanks for that. And you bring up some really valid points, both you and Balaji, and quite in sync with what you're saying about data. In Kim Dillim, I hope I'm getting it right. The more I say it, I think the better I increase my chances. No, I shouldn't have went there.
Kim is fine.
Kim, oh, there we go. Kim, what parameters are currently being used to authenticate data? Because that becomes the thing, isn't it? With so much of talk on big data and so much of talk on data analytics, how do we ensure in a secure environment that we're actually authenticating data that we're using? What are some of the steps that you're using in your company?
Yeah, so I think it's referencing multiple data points. We've also seen quite a lot of application of blockchain technology to ensure that you really have sort of like the true copy and the right type of data. And I think when we look at the banking industry and we look at KYC requirements, you know, there's sort of mapping from additional databases out of the telcos, you know, and from other areas where these databases are available to really understand that this is the right person. And I think with, you know, biometrics and facial recognition, a lot of these new technologies will be incorporated very soon into especially identity management and really identifying people and being able to really reference those points, because I think we still have major you know, sort of drawbacks when it comes to identity management as a country, simply because we don't have a proper national identity database, which means that the databases that actually have more, the banks and telcos probably have more national data than the actual authorities, right? And this sort of becomes a really big problem when you talk about, you know, sort of using data to really identify people, and also sort of knowing, like, how do you profile this person, right? Because if that person has a different identity somewhere else, it's really hard to, across industries, bring those data points together and profile. So you have to do sort of a lot of overlapping and overlaying to really see, is this the same person? Are these the same patterns that we're seeing? You know, and the transactions that are happening, can we verify them? So I think also when you look at the startup industry, you're seeing a lot of startups that focus simply on verification, around identity, verification of transactions, verification of that's really a huge opportunity in that space to play in, simply because of all the drawbacks that we have in our, you know, sort of current national setup.
And that presents its own set of challenges as well, especially in the, that's where people want to know and feel far more safe. This is their money, this is their investments, and they want to know that the people that they're putting their investments in have their back. And when you talk about these type of assurances that you don't have nationally, it's a point of concern. I want to move over to, we haven't heard from Bode in holdings. We've recorded a number of cases in various sectors, but more so in the financial space. And I possibly, again, because financial space has such a large bearing on our sense of security, what measures will you advise can be used to mitigate this challenge? And what have you done at FBN to ensure this as head of internal audit?
Thank you very much for asking me that question. It's very, because sincerely speaking, if we're talking about, if it's not results to financial, any of the actors will not be listed.
Yeah, Bode, your connection is really bad. I'm going to field over to Charles, who put up his hand earlier. So I'm going to send this Charles' way as Head of Threat Intelligence and Vulnerability Management. His fancy title that makes me feel like I can sleep better, knowing there's someone that looks after threat intelligence in the banking sector. So Charles, I'm going to ask you the same question while Bode tries to sort out his connectivity, really around the number of the increase in fraud that we see specifically in the financial space, and what measures will you advise can be used to mitigate this challenge currently and going forward as more and more people are transacting online? Over to you, Charles.
All right, thank you very much, Reddy, for that question. So the first thing I'd like to point out is anytime there has been an incident, maybe a fraud or a cyber-related incident like hacking and compromise, it's usually because a control wasn't present or a control was weak and got compromised, right? So what I would like to say is to prevent fraud from happening or from reoccurring, you first need to assess the various controls in place, if they are sufficient or not. So, for example, a two-person control when it comes to approving financial transactions. One person does not receive the transaction and approve at the same time. Someone receives and he hands over, via workflow to another person to approve. And you also need to ensure that these two people are not close in a way to prevent collusion, because fraud mostly is perpetrated by malicious insiders because they have good knowledge of the system. They also have good knowledge of the controls in place. So if there's any weakness in the control, they are actually in the best position to take advantage of those weaknesses and perpetrate fraud, sometimes without auditors even knowing. Okay, so what I would advise for mitigation of fraud is to assess the controls and find out if these controls are sufficient or not, and also try to test these controls. Sometimes bring in a third-party assessor to try and exploit these controls, find out if it's possible to carry out fraud. It's possible to take advantage of the system to satisfy one's pocket, okay? And also uh, ensure that awareness is carried out. We sometimes put awareness by the side, but awareness has a psychological impact. So if I'm an I am a trader in-house and I have the opportunity to commit fraud, but I'm always receiving emails, I'm always receiving screen rules, highlighting the consequences that come with committing fraud. It will always appear in my mind whenever I think of perpetrating fraud. So I'm going to move $5,000. Is it worth spending 5 years in prison? It doesn't work for everybody. There are people that are really hardened, up there and everything. But I mean, it will reduce the rate at least. And I like to say finally that just like someone told me this, and I want to agree with him that since we're talking about Nigeria, the Nigerian financial industry doesn't get the credit it deserves fraud-wise, because most of our frameworks are quite comprehensive, okay? And it takes deliberate and intentional compromise of sometimes controls that are already effective for you to perpetrate fraud. So
So give me an
that's
example of one of that, Charles. You're talking about Nigeria, not having the credit and implying that it's ahead of cybersecurity in that space. Give us an example, because as a South African, when I look across, I always think that fraud is synonymous with Africa, actually, from South Africa all the way upwards. So there isn't that confidence that I have, especially transacting online, that we're actually fraud proof. And you talk about moral consciousness, that people would or weigh it down between being in prison and there. And I think that once a mind has made up their mind, once an individual has made up their mind that they're going to defraud a system, they've moved beyond the fear of going to prison, because they've already decided that they're committing this crime. So there has to be not the reliance on a person's conscience here, but systematically a process to be able to really close in on being able to so freely and willingly being able to commit cybercrime. So I would really like to hear, what you speak about when you say that Nigeria hasn't had credit. Cite an example of where you think it's really on a superior leg of cybersecurity, please.
Okay, thank you very much for that question. Let me give you a practical example. I think that would be much better. Now, today in Nigeria, in some e-commerce companies like Jumia, Kunga, right, and payment companies like Paystack, Flutterwave. If I want to buy this item online, I add it to cart, correct? And
Correct. I know all about that.
yes, I add it to cart and they ask me for my PIN. I put in my PIN, and after putting in my PIN, I still get a token sent either to my email or as an SMS to my phone. But can I tell you that the reason why card fraud is prevalent outside Nigeria, probably, I don't know about Africa, I can't speak for Africa, but I know outside Nigeria, mostly abroad, is because today you can use just your card details, your PAN, your CVV and expiry dates to carry out transactions. Should I say this here? I tried to pay for an exam, I think last week or 2 weeks ago, and all that was needed was just my card details. I was waiting for the part where you asked me for the card PIN, or we're going to send you a token. And next thing I saw was payment successful. I'm like, wow. So that means I could actually pick my friend's wallet, carry out his ATM card, snap it front and back, and pay for as many exams as I want. Do you understand that? So here in Nigeria, we have a lot of regulations to ensure that you use a second factor of authentication for payments. So this is just an example, all right? So most times when you hear that a fraud occurred here or there, believe you me, it is something that probably was planned for a long time. Not something that any Tom, Dick, and Harry can just wake up and say, "Oh, I want to commit fraud," and you can do it. You can do that outside, But I'm not sure of here in Nigeria. I can honestly tell you that you cannot commit fraud easily. There are a lot of controls you have to break, a lot of systems you have to circumvent, and it's going to be quite difficult. And for payments mostly, it's usually quite difficult. You have to get a lot of data to help you to consummate that transaction.
Thank you for that, Charles. It's quite interesting that especially the point that you make. It's so easy to be able to commit fraud using anyone's access to their credit cards. I can see Oshioka is ready to shoot off an answer. So here's this one directed to you, Oshioka, because you seem so eagerly awaiting. How technologically savvy, knowledgeable, and equipped are the professionals that we have in the space right now in Nigeria, in Africa? We've had to pace up quite a bit digitally over COVID. So even though we were gearing up for going online, possibly in the next 5 years, COVID kind of just accelerated this into sports gear. How equipped are the professionals to have been able to just speed up with this?
Okay, thanks, Narani. So my response might be quite a bit of a contrast to what Charles does describe, because I actually do disagree quite vehemently with that position.
Oh, I love when people disagree. I love it. Please tell me.
In Nigeria. So I won't get into that. So nonetheless, if you think of the larger, just the tech space in Nigeria, I think, I don't think, the numbers prove themselves. We're doing quite well. If we look even just before the pandemic, there's been quite an exodus of Nigerian tech expertise outside of Nigeria, right? We're getting to Canada. In fact, the one I actually find quite interesting is in non-English speaking countries like, Germany, Amsterdam, Portugal. Even though there are communities where there's quite a large expatriate population, so the use of English is not as difficult as would have been maybe 30, 40 years ago. But still, the fact that you're having for-profit business organizations, so not an NGO, nothing that has to do with governmental intervention, but these are for-profit business organizations where they've looked globally and have determined that, okay, I can't find the right kind of developer, in the US or in the EU or in Australia, and I'm going to recruit someone from, and I know many cases, hundreds of them who had never traveled before, right? That I would recruit for a developer or for a security analyst, right? Or for even a project manager from Nigeria who has had no prior international experience. I think that from that regard, it speaks about how tech savvy and knowledgeable or equipped we are as professionals in this space. And I think it's even more telling in the security space, because if we use, say, as developers, right, one could argue that the way you code in Nigeria won't be any different than the way you code in the UK or the US or in Australia, right? Or in Ireland, or even in Germany, right? Codes, see, the coding language is the same. But you could say that perhaps the nature of the threats we face or the nature of vulnerabilities that are beyond the tech vulnerabilities would be different, right? Because if we're thinking of vulnerabilities or threats from a people, process, and tech perspective, right? The ones that emanate or from people and process could be quite different depending on the economics of the environment, the social structure, the laws that are in place, ethics, and what have you, right? The tech perspective of things would be quite the same, right? So the fact that you're having young Nigerians being recruited right from Nigeria, to work in Malta, in Germany, in Amsterdam. I'm actually even aware of some who've been recruited to work in Chinese companies, in French-speaking companies, with the hope that eventually they'll learn. It speaks of the confidence, if you will. I mean, it also speaks of the deficiency we have globally in not having enough professionals available. But it also speaks of the competence, I think, that Nigerians have developed. And let's not kid ourselves, I mean, right? So we would like to think of a place like America, for example, as a melting pot, which is not quite the case, right? There's still a very serious issue of racism. I'm currently advising a firm where the argument is, that Nigeria should have exceeded, where India is when it comes to outsourcing, right? And I always quickly remind them that we're Black, right? I mean, it's just a fact of the world, right? So, but the fact that we still get quite a heavy interest in recruiting directly, as far as I'm concerned, the exodus to Canada is as though the Canadian government opened a massive HR department, right? A massive recruiting department. It's called immigration, right? Because they're not recruiting anybody, whether it's Australia, whether it's Canada, they are not recruiting or giving, residency to individuals who cannot get jobs, right? They're looking at saying, look, in fact, I think there's the same reason why UK is now returning to the highly skilled migrant program, that they have. So in that regard, I do think that we are tech savvy. We have the knowledge. We have the equipment. Another case in point, I think another data point, something of data that we should take a look at would be, despite the pandemic, Q1 and Q2 of 2020 experienced significantly more foreign direct investment in our tech startups than it did in 2019 and 2018. TechCrunch, Nairametrics, all have this data out there. You can check it out, right? One might have thought that perhaps because of the pandemic, even going back to the home countries, you will see a lot less investments. I mean, the investment in Paystack, $20 million, speaks for itself. But there are many others like that, 10 million with I forget the name of the healthcare company now, but several of them who've been able to attract investments. Now, these investments, although yes, they are in tech businesses, but they are primarily in people. As an investor myself, and also I also represent areas for our Africa and Asian investor space. When a VC or PE is talking to you, right, the investment is being made in the individuals, in the team, not just in your technology or your solution or your product, right? The product starts with the people, right? So the fact that we saw an increase in Q1 and Q2, I don't know what the Q3 numbers are so far, but we're showing an increase in the investments in tech startups in Nigeria that surpassed 2019 and 2018 numbers. It also goes to show that there's more confidence. In fact, the Paystack one obviously may have began much earlier, but ended in the midst of when we're talking about not just the pandemic in Nigeria, but also the global pandemic, but also the some of the social, political, or civil unrest that we experience. And so I think it does show a confidence and a level of tech savvy that we have. Yeah. Now, that should not cause us to believe that because in our people, in our professionals in this space, that we have the tech savvy, we have the knowledge, and we're well equipped, that does not necessarily translate into being better prepared for the threats that do exist. I always say that fraud is not a problem, and that really is the wrong focus. If we are looking at fraud, for example, in the banking sector, thankfully I've never worked with before, but and the numbers are out there, if we are looking at fraud, right, it could give you the wrong perception that we're doing very well, right? You need to understand that within the financial services industry, especially for banks, that they have what they call their operational loss databases, right? So there are several other kinds of losses that organizations are experiencing that are not articulated in the language of fraud, But nonetheless, these operational losses are as the result of the same absences of, either the absence or the deficiency, right, of technical, procedural, or administrative controls, many of which are also associated with information security, right? So it could be, yes, I agree with Charles and others, right? And I know this is my time in the industry that did this too as well. The fraud rate, in Nigeria is even if you look at it exponentially since when we began keeping numbers, I think back in 2012 or 2014, it's still less than the global average, right? But that's just fraud alone, right? And that's based on what is reported, right? But if you look at operational losses in general, so what I'm referring to now is now that because of the absence of the control or because of the deficiency of the control, what other non-security losses have been experienced, right? In other words, there are incidents that are not only fraud incidents, right, but that are also the outcome of the deficiency of these controls that we need to have in place. And that number is quite astronomical. I can't say anything here publicly about that. And we don't have the same focus because it's just, quite frankly, no. Operational loss is just not as sexy as fraud. But I guarantee you that if you look at the financial statements of these highly regulated organizations like banks, and you look at them forensically, you see that while the story on fraud, we appear to have a great handle on that, that is not the case in terms of how we're doing when it comes to security in general.
Okay, thanks for that very in-depth assessment, Oshioko. And I think you highlight a very good point as well, that, whilst you say that people are confident in transacting with Nigerians, I think it's when you in the space that you're in, it already lends that there's tech savviness, and that's what builds confidence in investors as well. And if they can see that we're a tech savvy nation and we're progressive in how we handle the financial and investment side of it, their confidence does increase, especially coming into Africa. Is there anyone else that would comment? I would like to move on to the next question. A little bit more outside your sphere now, and just talking about support that you have within the space, but very much in the cyberspace. Has artificial intelligence increased efficiency in your space at all? And if so, how?
Okay, I'll respond to that, right?
Okay, sorry, Ashuri.
Oshioko, can we send this one to Bharat and then Zachariah?
Please, absolutely. Yeah. There was just a bit of quiet for
Thanks, Oshioko. I think they were trying to think deeply.
Okay, when we talk about artificial intelligence, I would say that it's my thought process that we are still, even globally, we are still at a very initial stages of artificial intelligence. What we see is just typically when we see robotics and things like that, and we want to implement those things into a cybersecurity sphere, we're still at a very initial stages. We are not able to define properly how this thing will be working into a cybersecurity space or human nature kind of thing. For me, artificial intelligence again is is a program. Initially, it's a program-based thing. You keep on learning on a fuzzy logic, and then you keep on learning, improving yourself. You keep reiterating your code, and again implement the learnings into this thing. So from a how it impacts the business from a cybersecurity perspective and in financial domains, we need to redefine things because customers are very volatile. Their demands keep changing every moment. When we talk about banking industry today, maybe as I mentioned earlier, the alternate channels are getting more and more used. But how you're going to use it? Some customer will say, I want everything. Like one of the panelists mentioned that you have too many controls in place. So my board of directors will say, what are we looking at? Are we looking at business or are we looking at security? So there should be a hand in hand into things, but how we're going to cope up with these two things along with the customer requirement and in terms of artificial intelligence or machine learning implemented into it. So for me, artificial intelligence is good to implement. However, when we want to implement it, we need to understand that we are not writing certain codes or like at the best, we can say that we are not doing a chatbot which works on a predefined wordings, or we are not defining a robotic processes around certain processes. Artificial intelligence means change dynamically as per the customer requirement. When customer is asking, I want to do this transaction, what are the options available? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. These are programs. But when the customer says, I don't have any of these options available with me, can I do any other options? Or what are your thought process around it? Now that's where the artificial intelligence will come into the picture. That okay, you're talking to human, and you need to provide options when you are serving a customer. So we still think that when we implement RPAs or chatbots, we are looking into artificial intelligence. However, it's way beyond those things. Over to you, Shioke, please.
Thank you very much, Bharat. I'm going to move across to Zachariah had his hand up as well. So I'm just going to ping Zachariah on this one. And I see that our colleague from Oracle, Shefumi, has joined us again. Welcome back, Shefumi. Sorry about the technical challenges you've been having. So we'll move across to Zachariah, and then I'm going to bring Shefumi in because she got disconnected for a while as well. Zachariah?
All right. Yeah, thank you very much. So to me, I think the role of artificial intelligence cannot be overemphasized, when it comes to cybersecurity. Because if you look at it now, ideally speaking, SOC supposed to be run 24/7. So that means that you need to have a different SOC analyst, different level of SOC analyst, tier 1 analyst, tier 2 analyst, and all of that. So as human being, can you really monitor the system 24/7? Can you really actually, for example, now, if you are dealing with a large number of data, we know that in bank, for example, now, volume and millions of transactions are happening every second. And as out of those millions of transactions, there's a probability that we have thousands of malicious transactions that can really happen. No matter the system that you build, I believe so much. Every technology is about cybersecurity is about having the right technology, having the right people, and also having the right processes in place. But you also need to build intelligence into your system. So how do you build intelligence into your system? For example, now, if I'm a database administrator and I normally log onto the database between 8 to 5, Monday to Friday, and maybe peradventure, something happened and you discover that the same DBA is trying to log on to the system on Sunday around 2 a.m. So the system should be intelligent enough. So that's what the system should have a kind of user entity behavioral analytics, because it's an aspect of artificial intelligence that run on machine learning capability. For example, now if I log onto the system when I'm not supposed to log on, probably I'm logging onto the system by 2 a.m. Then really I may have a reason for me to come to the office by 2 a.m. on Sunday. The system should alert at least the tier 1 SOC analyst that okay, something malicious is happening. I think for the modern scene, this is the manufacturer of the modern scene. They've also tried as much as possible to build some level of artificial intelligence in form of machine learning capability into the same, so that if there is any anomaly, so what they build into the same is what they call the user entity behavioral analytics. So something like that can also be built into your anti-malware system, like so the advanced malware protection system, the anti-malware system today, if you have an advanced malware protection system, so you should have like kind of a machine learning capability. For example, now, if I'm a malware or maybe I'm focused in malware designing and all of that, if I want to attack an organization with malware, I would rather not use a known malware. I would rather build my own malware from scratch. So your advanced malware protection system should be intelligent enough. If a file is trying to write in, let's presume that somebody opened up a PDF file, and that file is trying to do some, is trying to inspect what is on the memory, what is on the RAM, is trying to write to the registry. So that such system should be intelligent enough, so that you don't need to ask your malware analyst to be analyzing every activity, every file on your system. So the system should have its own intelligence. So it's not just about you having the right people, process, and technology. You must also build intelligence on top of this for you to really be proactive enough. So that's just my own thought. Thank you.
Thank you very, very much, Zachariah. Do we still have Shimui? Shimui, are you still with us? I know we lost you quite often there, so I'd just like to hand over to you for any closing remarks that you would like to contribute in terms of any of the questions that we've asked so far, instead of just starting all over again with you. So let me hand over to you. And we're really keen to hear what Oracle's doing in this space as well, Shimi. So over to you. Thank you. And then we'll just go around with some closing remarks. And I'd love to introduce you to the Regenesys team that's joining us this afternoon as well. Over to you, Shifumi.
Okay, thank you so much. And apologies for the technical issue. I also missed out on the third question, but I got a lot of responses from previous speakers and panelists, which I also corroborated everything that has been said. Also to reiterate that, cybersecurity is not foreign to Nigeria. It's a global problem. And one of the motivating factor for most of this is financial gains. I think that is one thing, and that's why the financial sector would always be spotlighted when it comes to cybersecurity. And one of the solutions that Oracle do is that we support the FSI, which is the financial sector, a lot with all of our resources. Our Gen2 cloud especially is one that is built to have autonomous database, and also which is very key on all security itself. And one of the things that we've now also done as an academy is to ensure that we are also ensuring that we have professionals, which is one of the questions that I may have missed, is how do we prepare professionals for this? Because one of the things that my colleagues here will tell you is the fact that while technology is ever evolving, we are always short-sighted with the fact that we don't have enough professionals or enough experienced persons to come on board and battle these challenges so that we can actually enjoy the benefits of technology. So we also support schools that are registered on the Oracle Academy platform to have access to this cloud program. We support them with hands-on projects and demos where they can work on real-life projects, such from our clients most times, so that they can also prepare for the world. And to answer the question, I don't know if I've answered already about if we have enough equipped professionals. I believe that we don't have enough at the moment, but there are a lot of opportunities. There are a lot of training opportunities that I see. There are a lot of open source learning platforms, grants, and even organizations that should be focused on commerce and profit only are even investing in some of their own funding to ensure that people are trained when it comes to cybersecurity. And I also like that financial sector, especially what are we doing? So we're collaborating. Oftentimes, I just get messages from the banks that I use warning me against fraudulent actions, telling me not to do this, don't share your details. So are we doing some form of activity? Maybe not enough, but yes, we are gearing towards that as far as Nigeria is concerned. I also would say that collaborative efforts would help. I read some information about last year about a tech company that is going to be sharing blacklisted hackers to other companies so that they are aware about it. One other thing that one of our panelists also mentioned was the fact that if we can also sync all of the data that we have in Nigeria, that may also help. There are a lot of data flying everywhere. We have so many collected data for different reasons. And maybe if that is also synced as one, we can use that more beneficially to curb some of these challenges that we face in the country when it comes to cybersecurity. But where money is involved, really, I think that's been the most motivating question for why this is very frequent in the country. And we'll keep evolving. The country is one that is adopting technology quickly. We're thankful for banks, telcos, startups that are also interested in making sure that they are compliant when it comes to, once you know that you are going to be collecting personal information from your clients, you really do have to take cybersecurity key, and we at Oracle keep supplying solutions, technologies deploying with our customers to ensure that they can also support their end users with this.
Thank you very much, Shifumi. Great to have you back again, and thank you for that contribution. You did a good job of actually summarizing most of our questions in your input there as well. Is there anyone else that would like to add any points that we may have missed out, or that you were eager to contribute, and I may have missed you out in one of the questions, unseen your hand? Anyone? And then I would love to introduce my team. So I did see a hand. Is that you, Ogunhevefo? Yeah.
I think just in the area of fraud, one thing I needed to point out is the fact that when we talk about fraud, we need to consider both fraud from the perspective of the organization and that of the customer. So we've done a lot in protecting ourselves, but unfortunately, most times the customer does get hit. And so a lot of what we need to do in that regard is awareness. So awareness, and there's the conscious factor about the fact that when you push out products, you need to ensure that your products have the necessary protection in them to protect customers, and sometimes helps customers from themselves too. So it's not enough to just consider, we have a lot of technology we've invested into protecting ourselves, but we find that most times the losses are coming from the customer end. And some organizations feel that, well, it's not a problem for them, but let's remember the fact that there's a reputational damage that comes from your customers keep getting hit. So if we take a look at the industry and find that most times, or in so many instances, your customers are suffering losses, then it points back to you that there's something you're not doing properly. So a lot of awareness, and I heard what Charles said. And one thing about my end is that apart from my function, I also sit on the disciplinary committee, and a lot of times when I see frauds take place, I tend to go back to carry out a root cause analysis to find out what exactly was responsible. And I can tell you that most times they are due to weaknesses in our processes. Averagely, you don't have people that want to commit fraud, but when those weaknesses or those gaps are there, they'll be exploited. So a lot of work needs to be done about ensuring that our processes are strong, they are robust, our systems are effective, and they work the way they should work. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that. I think we're seeing that as experts in your industry, specifically to financial services, we've got threat managers online with us, we've got compliance and audit, we've got governance, we've got COOs and MDs joining us this afternoon. But as you're evolving in the digital space, so is the criminal mind. And so how do you actually stay 10 steps ahead of a criminal mind on a digital platform to enable the customer's confidence in being able to transact online, with just being able to stay online and cutting back on interaction at the forefront of our businesses. So that is something to think about, and I'd love to hear from you when we connect with you. I will be in Nigeria next week, so I look forward to having personal engagements with each of you, and we'd love to host you in our offices in Nigeria to introduce our Nigeria VP Business Development, Moyen. She was online. Did I lose Moyen? I think we may have just had a connectivity issue. She was online a few seconds ago. I'm going to move on to our founder, Dr. Marco Saravanya. Dr. Marco Saravanya started Regenesys almost 23 years ago in South Africa and expanded into Nigeria and Mumbai. And really the leadership is talks of having global impact through leaders and entrepreneurs across the world. Over to you, Dr. Marco Saravanya.
Good afternoon to all of you. I would like to thank you for joining this forum. We really appreciate very much your time and your contribution. I hope this is the beginning of a very long-term relationship, mutually rewarding and mutually beneficial relationship. I hope to see some of you next week in Nigeria, and I hope to see you after, maybe in South Africa, maybe in India, maybe in Croatia. If you wonder about my accent comes from a country called Croatia. And some of you are laughing. I know you know Croatia has a very good soccer players, and you may know Luka Modric and a few other guys, you know. And sorry for the last game between Croatia and Nigeria. I think in the World Soccer Cup. Okay. So purpose of this forum is really to learn, to share knowledge, to share all innovation that you guys are doing, to network and to do business, really, to develop business relationships. So I hope that the Regenesys is going to do business with you, that Regenesys is going to be able to add value to your organization. We have a very strong, very strong and beautiful and powerful programs we offer from India, especially in the area of cybersecurity and coding and artificial intelligence, robotics, and all types of digital programs, digital marketing and blockchain, which we deliver from India. Currently, we have several programs running, delivering them online from India directly. As you know, India has a lot of capital when it comes to software and IT and information and communication technology development. It's considered to be a software capital of the world. I hope to also see some of you in South Africa. In South Africa, maybe attending some of our qualifications, MBA degrees and doctorate maybe. And I hope also that Regenesys is going to do some customized programs for your companies. So those are all types of offerings that Regenesys does. So from executive education, customized programs, to qualifications, to digital programs delivered from India. And I hope you're going to become part of our network of 200,000 alumni from 190 countries from across the world. And this network, can help you individually and can help your business, because business is about, developing relationships and trust. And I hope this is the beginning of developing or trusting and trusting relationship, which will last, for many years in the future. So once again, thank you so much. And I hope to see you next week. And we're going to organize an event, dinner event. We'll also launch a book, as Indrani, I think, mentioned already. And I wish you good luck and all the best, and God bless all of you. Thank you. Over to you, Indrani.
Thank you, Dr. Marco. Moyen has joined us. Moyen holds our fort in our Nigerian office. Moyen, over to you to greet our team of panelists.
Hello, everyone. My name is Moyen. I want to thank you once again for being a part of, accepting to be a part of this webinar. I look forward to meeting you personally, and we'll build a mutually benefiting relationship with you. Thank you once again, and have a very fantastic day ahead.
Okay. And thank you to everyone for all your contribution. It was an absolutely lively discussion to hear how invested you are in security and keeping us as consumers quite safe. So I feel I could trade in Nigeria with bankers like you on the other side, or security managers like you on the other side of it. And I really look forward to meeting with you in person next week. We're hosting our book launch where the proceeds of that goes towards our foundation to fund a student that wouldn't otherwise qualify financially to study at any institution from as little as 535 Rand a month. Moyen will be sending out invites to you, and we look forward to seeing you at the book launch as well. Good afternoon, everyone. Have a lovely week further. Thank you very much for your participation.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you, everyone. Take care, everyone. Stay safe. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.
Thanks and bye.
I can kill myself now.